Hello and welcome to another episode of The Winding Stairs. My name is Juan Sepulveda and I'm your host, and I thank you again for joining me on this journey up the winding stairs. Today I have the pleasure of having a good friend of the show, a brother of ours that you probably already know, but there is a lot about him that you are yet to know, and we'll talk about it today. His name is Brother Robert Hurd, and Brother Robert he's a good friend of the show, as I mentioned, and he is one of the founding charter founders of Enlightenment Lodge number 198 in Colorado. He's a past master of Tejon Lodge number 104 in Colorado Springs, Colorado, and he is known for mainly the magazine Living Stones magazine, which I'm sure you've seen. Brother Robert, welcome to the Winding Stairs.
Juan, thank you very much. It's certainly a pleasure and an honor to be asked to be on your show.
Thank you, brother. It's a pleasure to have you with us. We've been virtual friends for a long time, and we finally get a chance to speak face to face. So it's definitely a pleasure to do that. And I wanted to start with one of the things that connects with the Winding Stairs. I want to ask you a question regarding grammar to start.
Okay.
And I'm not going to throw you a doozy. This is just to learn a little bit more about you. Are there any words that you hate or love?
Wow. I think in general, the words that I dislike, I'd probably not say hate, but I really dislike it when people use words that aren't really words. That seems to happen a lot in today's age. So I think that's sort of in general. I can't think of any off the top of my head that particularly get on my nerves.
Can I give you one?
Absolutely.
Do you like ginormous? That's probably one of the words that I dislike the most.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. I wish I could have thought about this one more. I probably could have come up with some good ones. I hear a lot in my daily life. Guys say things, and I don't know if they make them up or they just hear them other places. But the English language is just turning into something that I almost don't even understand anymore myself. So it's definitely hard.
Well, definitely as a publisher, this is one thing that I can tell it's close to you. The importance of grammar and communication. Has this been an interest of yours for a long time, or how long have you been interested in the art of grammar?
Well, to be honest, I'm horrible at it myself. It might seem a little hypocritical, but the whole aspect of writing and publishing and whatnot, for me, the interest really came from more of the desire to help other brothers, to give them a voice, not to just be some guy that sits on the mountain and edits and criticizes others or whatnot. I really wanted to give a voice to other men. And it's certainly something that in today's day and age, even the written word has gotten a lot more difficult because, penmanship is no longer taught in school. Grammar and rhetoric are almost misunderstood nowadays even. So it's definitely difficult. And I do want to help create an environment of interest again for men to be able to write and communicate effectively. And in our specific niche, write and communicate about their experiences with Freemasonry. So
that's excellent. And I think that a lot of people usually find barriers. If they're not perfect at doing something, they might feel hesitant to embark on a project that requires that knowledge, where today, with a little bit of help or dedication, we should be able to surpass that.
Absolutely.
And with your example, you said that you're not great at grammar. A lot of us aren't, but we are in that process of overcoming any kind of obstacle so that we can still make an impact and really make a difference on the people that we engage with.
Absolutely. Like anything, it takes practice, and it takes the willing to, or the desire rather, to be better than you are in your current state. You come up with a goal, and you work towards it, just like anything else. A few years ago, I got really interested in what's called Spencerian handwriting. It was a form of penmanship that was taught around the early 1900s. And I practice and practice and practice. And to be honest, I'm still horrible at it, but I still have these PDF lessons from the 1900s that teach penmanship. So that's just one of those things. Anybody can improve on anything. It just takes work. It takes labor and practice. And that's unfortunately, with many men these days, they feel like maybe they don't have time, or maybe they're not interested because, their buddies don't think it's cool or something like that. But that's the way it is.
Well, we definitely have something in common there. That's one thing that I'm very, very passionate about: handwriting. I have my books where I have an idea, I write it down there, and I have changed my penmanship at least 3 times in my lifetime, and it has been on purpose. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that's something that I definitely want to see some of those PDFs, if you don't mind.
Oh, you bet. I'll throw them up on the website. They're old things, but it's practice sheets on penmanship and flourishing, things that are called flourishing and stuff. So
I love that. That's excellent. And now, I'm curious about, in your process of editing for the magazine, I presume that today everything you receive is digital, right? Or do you still have handwritten notes for publication?
Not handwritten. So what happens is the majority of the articles that are sent to me are sent electronic. Somebody types them on a word processor and then emails them to me. I do have, every once in a while, I get some older brother somewhere who will mail me a copy of something. I haven't received any handwritten ones yet, but I have received, hard copies that somebody will send me and say, "Can you publish this?" And from that, to be honest, my wife is the big copy editor. I'm sort of the editor in chief, and I read everything for sort of the content, relevancy, make sure that they haven't offended anybody, whether intentionally or not, and whatnot. But my wife is actually the professional copy editor. She's a copy editor for a medical institution that puts out medical information. So it has to have a very high degree of grammatical and structural integrity. And she is very, very good at that. And she goes through the articles and does all of the things like, make sure all the Oxford commas are there if they're not, and the parentheses are all there, and the end quotes are on that somebody left off. And, some of the bigger things where a guy might, he's typing away some stream of consciousness and he forgets words. And when he reads it back to himself, his brain is reading it correctly, but the words are actually not there. So she does the majority of that type of stuff. And again, I do the content editing to make sure the content fits, our goal for the magazine. And then I do all the layout and the publishing type stuff electronically, sort of the artistic layout type stuff before it goes to print.
Sounds like a very good, a good team that you have put together.
I'm really lucky. I mean, without her, the quality of the magazine would definitely be much lower.
Well, that's there's an expression that says, behind every great man, there's a even greater woman, right?
That's it. You bet. You bet.
When I'm curious about the beginnings of your career as a Mason, how did that begin for you?
Okay. So when I was about, say, 12 or 13, my father showed me what were my grandfather's rings. My grandfather had died before I was born, so I had no relationship with him. I didn't know the man. But my father gave me his rings. And my father was part of that generation that didn't join. He was part of that gap. And he wasn't interested in it, but he felt, maybe I would be. So he gave me my grandfather's rings. I wear my grandfather's ring, basically every day. And so through my younger life, I was always fascinated by the mystique, of Masonry. What is it? The secret society, and hardly anybody could tell me. And I had one friend of the family that I had asked about it, and he said, when you turn 21, you come ask me again. So I had thought that, of course, the age limit was 21 at that place in that time. And I waited until I was about 22 years old, and I was living here in Colorado, and that friend of the family had passed away. I didn't know any Masons. And I told my wife, I said, I have these rings, and I think this is a way for me to get to know my grandfather and, get to know the man that I had never known, read things that maybe he had considered and contemplated, and experience things that he had contemplated, and therefore, find a connection with my grandfather. So I wrote a letter to the Grand Lodge of Colorado, and it was just one of those kind of, silly open letters. I didn't know what to say. I just said, to whom it may concern, my name is Robert Hurd, and I would like to join your organization. I don't know anybody. Well, I had a guy at my door the next day ringing my doorbell.
Oh, wow.
And things being what they were, this was 20 years ago. The craft was, hurting for members. So they were anxious to get me in. But so that was sort of that was why I joined. And I typically tell people that, to me, at least, there is definitely a difference in why I joined versus why I stayed. Because like many men, I didn't get a very fulfilling experience back then through my initiatic experience. I definitely had a good experience, but I was a little frustrated with the processes, and like the majority of modern men these days, modern Freemasons. But so what happened was I basically started a method of self-study, self-education, because I wasn't getting it from my lodge at the time. And I jokingly referred to that as, that's when I drank the Kool-Aid. I was fully on board then. Then I was connected not only with my grandfather from that standpoint, but I felt like then I found the philosophy. I found the spirituality that I was missing, the connection to nature, to divinity, to a lot of things that I had been missing, and what I feel most men these days are missing, and why they seek out Freemasonry. So that's sort of my story. Is two-part story of joining to learn more and have a connection with my grandfather, and basically just drinking the Kool-Aid and really diving deep into the philosophy of Freemasonry.
Well, I'm glad for both of the reasons, because definitely Masonry has received a lot from your labor, and I thank you for everything that you've done.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Now, if you have an opportunity now to speak to that young man who joined Masonry for whichever reason and is not finding what he came in looking, not because it's not there, but because it's not presented to him in the correct manner, or he is not he's not like we have been. What would you recommend to that brother for his fulfillment of what he seeks?
Sort of like what I just mentioned that I wound up doing with myself, which was self-education. It's really easy these days to buy books online, electronically. Forums have sort of gone out of vogue nowadays, but there are tons of Facebook groups and things like that. Even if you can't get a fulfilling experience locally with your local lodge or your close men that are around you, it can still pretty much be easily found in the pages of a book. That education is there if you're only willing to read and seek it and study. And then if you have questions, there are still thousands upon thousands of men available, just like this technology between you and I right now, to talk and discuss and share experiences. certainly the biggest advice that I give any young man in Mason who has any kind of frustration is don't depend on others for your total fulfillment.
I love it. That's concise right there. Don't depend on others for your personal fulfillment. And I hope that the brothers that are listening to the show or watching us on YouTube, that they do take that to heart. I'm thankful that I'm the kind of person that if there's something that I want, I go and get it. I don't wait for it to be handed to me. It's not in my nature, but not everybody has that innately. And it might need a little bit of pushing. And I hope that, if somebody is listening to this and feels that there is some sort of disparity between what you expected from Masonry and what you're actually getting, it's in your hands. And luckily,
Absolutely.
like you said, we have the connections now. We have access to the knowledge of the universe in one of these puppies. I'm lifting a phone.
Absolutely.
So
I've been so blessed to be able to travel all over the world, and I have friends now that I never would have met them face to face had it not been for Freemasonry and my ability to travel. But there are still other men who I haven't been able to travel and meet yet. I mean, I've yet to be able to visit the continent of Australia, but through technology, I'm able to have conversations like this, one-on-one. I can see you and we can really interact. And I can still have a very tight connection with you as a brother, even though we've never met in person.
that's right.
And that's invaluable to human beings, not just Freemasons, but.
Absolutely. And I think it's important, and I try to convey this to as many people as I can. Do not take it for granted. Like, we are in such a privileged place in history where we have access to all of these resources, and yet they go squandered. People just don't use them to the best of their ability. So
Absolutely. And I fully believe we're in a time period where shrinking the size of the world through technology is even more important today. An aspect that I generally tell Freemasons is it is extremely important that you travel. Don't just be a tourist, but travel, experience other cultures. And I mean that on both a community or a social standpoint, as well as a Masonic standpoint. It's important to travel to other lodges and experience other lodge cultures. But just as basic human beings, it's very important nowadays that we travel and experience these other cultures so that we're no longer bound by, this hearsay of, well, that group of people is bad and whatnot. When you really go and you're able to experience those cultures, you find much more value and are able to respect them, not just tolerate them or have a religious or a cultural tolerance, but you actually find a lot more respect. And when you get away from the bad, television, news, the media that's always trying to split people apart, you find out that, people all over the world are much more alike than they are different. A mother is a mother wherever you go. A soldier is a soldier wherever you go. Little kids are little kids, whether they're playing with a $75 video game or a stick and a rock.
that's right.
And that's very, very important for the human race to sort of realize that, and to sort of get back on your point. This technology helps us do that. It helps us connect with other people, and like you say, we can't squander that. We need to do that more. Stop relying on the news to tell us what type of people those people are over there on that other continent, and go find out for ourselves.
Absolutely. Definitely puts travel in a different perspective. It's enriching. It opens that empathy to other human beings that we might have lost.
Absolutely.
So that's wonderful. I appreciate you saying that. And traveling doesn't have to be something that takes you to another country. Traveling could be local. You could do
Absolutely.
You could go to a different community in your area, and even then have interactions with other strangers that cease to be strangers. You can forge relationships anywhere.
Yeah. We have 4 different lodges that meet in my physical building where our lodge is. And sometimes even just traveling, not anywhere else physically, but meeting in the same building, just, sitting in on a different lodge's meeting, you experience that lodge's culture, and they may do things a little differently because, our Colorado ritual may be the same, but all the little traditions that every lodge comes up with, it's interesting to experience those. We can experience that in the same building, or we go 5 miles down the road to another lodge, it's even more different. Or, like we said, we travel to another state, it can be very different. But it's very important just to experience those.
Now, we've talked about the magazine, and another big project that you set yourself to accomplish was to be involved in the establishment of Enlightenment Lodge number 198. And I've never started or seen personally the process of starting a lodge, but I presume that it is a very complex process. What motivated you, or the group of brothers that got together to establish this lodge? What motivated you all to embark in this mission?
Again, sort of back to my story, it was all revolving around the lack of fulfilling experience that I had. So I had I wouldn't say a poor, but it just wasn't totally fulfilling for me, my experience. And funny enough, I found out that there were many other brethren, not only from my lodge, but from the other lodges, like I just mentioned, that also met in that building, that just met on different nights. And through travel, being able to meet with each other, we all started to have these little discussions of, we don't like this, or we don't like that, or it sure would be nice if we could do XYZ instead of ABC. And we're not getting good answers as to why we haven't been able to do that. So through those talks and discussions, most of them in the parking lot, we found out that there were so many of us, we could potentially start our own lodge and create that experience from scratch that we had desired. So we went through that process. And like you said, it wasn't an easy process. We certainly went through it very, very quickly, much more quickly than what we had expected to go through. We thought it would be maybe a 5-year process, but we actually went through it in only about 18 months, from what I remember. Every state, every jurisdiction is different. They all have different rules, laws, rules, and regulations, about what it takes to start a new lodge. I have helped create new lodges, and I've also helped to transform lodges, where sometimes brethren will come to me and they say, you've had a lot of experience in this. Would you help us, give us some tips and tricks on what hurdles there are, maybe some things that we should do, or their processes? So I've been able to help several lodges both either create from scratch or transform a lodge where there were brethren who said, we're not getting a fulfilling experience, but we're the only ones left. So we want to, just change our lodge. So I've certainly helped a lot of those lodges also. And again, it's just not that I'm any particular big know-it-all or whatnot, but I have a lot of leadership experience. I've worked for a leadership and management institution for 20 years now. So I give lectures and I help facilitate discussions and help those men figure out what they want, because there is no magic pill. If there was, Freemasonry would have found it a long time ago, how to, fix lodges. So I just help them facilitate finding what it is that they desire.
Now, I'm becoming more familiar with the traditional observance movement, and
Okay.
this is what we now see, something that is spreading throughout the country. You can see a lot of lodges admiring some of the initiatives that this has taken place.
Yeah.
How would you describe, for someone who knows nothing about what the traditional observance movement is, how would you describe that to them?
Okay, so my sort of elevator speech. Traditional observance masonry, and there's even arguments over its name. Some people have traditionally, excuse the pun, called it traditional observance. Some of them just call it observant masonry. Let's just remove the name for a minute. The movement, what I like to call it, it is just that. There was an organization created to help, just like what we've been talking about, lodges who are struggling, or Freemasons who are struggling with their experience. It was created to help those men. It turned into a movement because it was so popular. Freemasonry itself is not broken. What's broken is our horrible substitution for it that we've come to know at the celebration of mediocrity and whatnot. So I hate to even use the monikers, but traditional observance masonry is basically nothing than actually performing true Freemasonry. There's a lot of people get all nervous about it, and they think maybe it's some kind of black magic kind of ceremony or something, and it's seriously not. They operate under the same ritual and rules, and like everybody else, it's simply a group of guys who wanted a special lodge culture, and it's not to disparage any others. I believe everybody deserves their own culture, just like human beings. Lodges are no different. I have no problem with a lodge that wants to dress up in coveralls and do a barn degree or whatnot. It's fun. It's that's their culture, and I respect that, and I'll even go and participate with them now and then. But there are other brothers who want their culture, and so this movement, this observant masonry or traditional observant masonry, was really about that. It's about allowing a group of men to have a specific lodge experience, which is typically it typically has music. There may be incense. We try and use a lot of candlelight for ambiance. There's usually sort of a uniform appearance. Some lodges have like coat and tie. Some lodges choose tuxedos. And again, it's not to appear any better than anybody else. It's just different. And that experience has been popular, I think, because it has been a very successful model. And I say model again, because there's no, even among traditional observance lodges, they're not the same. You can go to one observant lodge and it be this experience. You go to another one, it's a totally, completely different experience. So that was a much longer explanation than I thought I was.
That's a very good explanation. That's a very good explanation, because it shows that even within a movement that some people might perceive as hermetic, there is flexibility and there is a personalization within it.
Oh, absolutely.
But the essence, based on what I hear from you and what I've heard from other brothers, the essence is there, is that you're attempting to provide brothers with a rich experience that it's going to help them have a catalyst for those experiences that enlighten them, those experiences that uplift them.
Absolutely.
And I do agree that we do need that. And maybe we don't need a label for it. We just need to practice masonry the way it's supposed to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I said, when it comes down to it, it's simply just being, just practicing Freemasonry, trying to do ritual as good as you can do ritual, trying to fulfill that man who maybe is being initiated as best you can, to enlighten him, to bestow this new knowledge and maybe wisdom, this enlightenment upon him, and not have it be some silly or poor experience, because I really believe in the energy of an initiation. And I don't know if you've ever heard anybody play the piano, but when they hit a wrong note, it's almost painful. I mean, it literally is like almost painful. So sometimes when you go to a ritual and you hear a guy that's just making mistake after mistake, and maybe he's sloppily dressed or he doesn't know his floor work, it literally is painful. And again, this whole observant masonry is about trying to get over that, because, in the United States, the last 30 years, masonry has by far celebrated mediocrity to an extreme. We go to a degree, we see a poor performance, yet at the end, somebody still stands up, claps, thanks everyone for a wonderful job. What does that do? That actually trains the young new guy to celebrate mediocrity. It tells him that it's okay not to know your part. It's okay not to do a good job. And not only that, he'll actually get thanked for it. And maybe a Grand Lodge officer even has stood up and thanked everybody for such a wonderful job. That kind of stuff, those little hypocrisies like that are things that really irk me. As a person, I know if I make even a little mistake, I'm upset with myself and I try and do better next time. But Freemasonry in the last 30 years in general has not done a very good job in teaching men that that is what's supposed to happen, that we are literally supposed to try and be better, not be comfortable with poor performance and poor experience.
Well, that's powerful, and I can't help but to remember moments where I have noticed exactly that, where I haven't stood up because of either I'm in a an unfamiliar lodge, or it's happened where I wasn't long enough. I wasn't a Mason for long enough, and I thought to myself, "Is this? Yeah, they're really praising him for his mistakes." But anyway, we'll continue that conversation later, so I can speak frankly. Uh, but for that brother that's sitting there, that is new and it's noticing that perhaps people are not taking pride in seeking perfection in their performance, would you have a word of advice for that brother? What can he do, even though he doesn't have an officer position, he hasn't been in Masonry for too long? What can he do to start changing that culture?
Well, it's sort of like a child. A child is very impressionable, and as a child grows up, the child is either going to emulate its parents' actions, or it's going to rebel against them. And I think what Freemasonry has seen in general on a large scale is Masons rebel against the experience that they've seen in Lodge. So we have to be careful, because again, we are educating them. We're educating them on what we expect from them, and we educate them what we accept as what's being okay. My advice to them, though, is one of the reasons most men join in the very beginning, and one of the reasons they're sort of told the purpose of Freemasonry is to change them. This is a personal experience. Now, yes, we share it with a lot of people, but it's sort of like sharing the path that you're on, even though we all have different destinations, maybe. That young man is looking at all those experiences, and he sees the good ones that he should emulate, and he sees the bad ones that he shouldn't. He needs to have that personal awareness that his goal is to be better than himself, not necessarily to be better than others, but to be better than himself. So watch what other people do, and even a negative can be a positive. You can turn a negative, and just, sometimes we see somebody doing something wrong and we can say, you know what, that's sort of a blessing. I'm blessed by that person, even though they're doing something wrong, because they've just taught me what I know that I never want to do.
That's a good lesson right there.
You bet.
That's very good. Now, in 2012, you wrote a book called The Initiatic Experience, and it talks about that process that helps a man evolve from one state to another. What got you interested in that component of Masonry as a whole, or that human experience? What got you interested in that particular part?
Well, again, that is what I believe the foundation of Freemasonry is that transformation, sort of like our older sister of alchemy teaches, that turning that lead, that base, into a gold or a higher self. So it really is about that transformative process. My interest sort of came illustrious brother Bob Davis has done a lot of work in this area. It's an interesting sort of field of sociology. And it revolves around cultural initiations. Now, in other cultures, I mean, one of the biggest ones, Latin America, for instance, they celebrate things much more than we do. You know, you have quinceañeras for girls and boys when they turn 15. Weddings are much more celebrated and whatnot. In the United States, our culture has sort of shifted and changed, and we don't celebrate those coming of age type things anymore like other cultures do. And I think that's a really bad thing for us. Our young men and young women don't have a firm understanding of maturity, or that point where they should no longer be a child and start becoming an adult. You know, we still have sort of a sweet 16, you can drive, you know, 18, you can vote, 21, you can drink, but there's really there's no demarcation like there still are in other cultures, where there are these huge celebrations when a person is literally, the day before he's a child and the day after he's a man. And I believe that is part of the initiatic experience of Freemasonry, and what it has in common with ancient cultures and civilizations is the pathway to that, the pathway of showing a man and making him realize that he has a future state that he desires, and he has a current state in which he is in, and he has to do something to bridge that gap through, you know, experience and lessons and philosophy and education. But also, the men who are the initiators are charged with bestowing that upon him in a way that is meaningful, energetic, and, you know, powerful. So that's sort of where the book came from. I'd done a lot of cultural studies, you know, anthropology, sociology, and I just found so many connections. I found a lot of particular connections that are interesting to us as Freemasons through all of the cultures, Egypt, Greece, you know, with our older brother Pythagoras, and the Rosicrucians and the Templars. So I sort of, through my book, I have this long linear history where I start to show how these cultures had these rituals and how similar they are all around the world, and how we all have a common thread, even the thread of our Masonic initiatic experience. So that's what the book really outlines.
It sounds like something that brothers could use, and not just brothers, anybody could use, embrace that process of transmutation of sorts.
Yep. Absolutely.
Well, brother, you've been very generous with your time and with your wisdom. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today.
Again, it's certainly my honor, my pleasure.
Thank you, brother. And for the brothers that are interested in knowing more about your work, the brothers that have received some inspiration by hearing you today, where can they go to find more about you, about your publication, and about your book?
The best place to find all of that in one location is my personal website. So my personal website, I believe I shared the link with you, and you can post that up along with the information for Winding Stairs. But I'll go ahead and say it out loud for these guys. It's www.initiatic.guru. So it's not a .com, it's a .guru, G-U-R-U, and www.initiatic.guru. That has information about me personally, information about the magazine, my book, all that kind of stuff, all in one location.
Very convenient. I encourage the brothers to go and visit that website. And if you haven't read Living Stones magazine yet, do yourself a favor and grab a copy. If you can subscribe, do so. If you don't find value from it in 30 days, you can cancel your subscription. But I can guarantee you're going to keep it for a long time, because definitely you'll have a lot of little nuggets of information that are going to help you in your journey up the winding stairs. Brother Robert, I greatly appreciate it again, and hopefully we can talk again some other time.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, brother. All right, my friends. And If you enjoyed this conversation, I encourage you to share it with your brothers through all the different social media. Give them an opportunity to get to know Brother Robert. And for those people that are interested in Masonry, get them to learn a little bit about the Masonic experience and the initiatic experience for that matter. And until the next time, may your steps be firm and your path illuminated as we continue our journey up the winding stairs.